Alaman nyo.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever or whenever you may be. This is the overnight. I am DM Foss, and tonight we've got G Webs. How's it going, G Webs?
Fred Medlin, thanks for the link. Thanks for hosting.
And let's take a quick peek to see who was out there. New York Outcast, Guns and Barbecue, and Roy Munson.
I've heard of most of those people before.
Yeah. So tonight I was going to talk about how bad guys choose their victims, and this is not an in-depth study into criminology or victimology, but kind of came out of I saw a couple videos on it was either Instagram or YouTube. They're kind of the YouTube short, and it was females talking about being more aware, and the what they were saying was good. Kind of the examples they gave, being aware, and one of the examples was like loading groceries into your car at the store, and that the information she's presenting was I felt was really good stuff to be aware and look around, but the example as applied, there's a lady at her car and she had her cart pulled up next to her, which kind of covered her side, which was good. And then she was saying to look around so you're aware of what's around, but the video example, she'd load and then look, and she looked panicked in the example. And it was, like I said, the crux of the information was good. How it was portrayed, I thought was kind of bad. And I, this is not meant to crap on them. It's just, it got me kind of thinking. And then it was probably after the last overnight. I think we were talking in the back chat, and I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but that gave me the idea to maybe look into how a criminal will choose its victims. And there is a little what I want to. I'll say there are some links in the description of some of the articles that I read, where I got my information from, and a lot of them kind of looked at a study that was done in the 80s, and I forget who did the studies, but it's in there in some of the links. They took prisoners, and this was kind of a voluntary deal, but they took prisoners and then showed them video of pedestrians walking down the street, and then asked them who would they target and then why. And a lot of them, then when you're dealing with criminals, so you don't always know if they're being truthful or not, but reading through it, there was enough correlation between the different, what they were all kind of saying the same things, which would lead you to believe that there's validity to the information that was gathered.
Like independent sources all came to the same conclusion.
Yeah, they're all saying similar things. So it's if you've got one guy saying something different, that might be an outlier. But when I think it was most of the criminals, a lot of them couldn't even say why exactly. It would just be they picked up on some cues, and then would say, well, this person or not that person. And it's overall, it was who was more likely to fight back, kind of who would be the toughest versus who would be the easiest victims. And this is more talking about like muggings or like that, not property crimes. We might get into that a little bit later, or sexual violence. That I'll touch on that a little bit later. There's similarities, but there's a little bit different. There was a study done with that too, and like I said, we'll try and touch on that a little later. But one of the big things that came up, or well, I guess two things that came up was the way somebody walked and how confident they seemed. And those kind of tie together, a confident walk where you look squared away versus if you have a limp or you drag your feet or don't look confident, look at the ground, don't keep eye contact with people, then those would be the ones that's who the criminals tended to pick as who they would victimize. And there's most of the articles that you find kind of reference this one study that was done in the 80s. I didn't really see more recent studies. There might be. I just didn't happen to come across them. M. Gabriel's out there and GTP Productions. Good evening. Excuse me. And that confidence, some of the stuff that I came across said to portray that, even if you're not confident, to pretend you're confident. And can you really pretend to be confident realistically? That's when you read self-defense articles, you kind of have to take them with a grain of salt, because some of them that I came across tried to back it up with data, and some of them was kind of anecdotal, or what they thought, which there may be some validity to it, but some of it is just somebody's opinion. And, and I guess that's what some of tonight is, my opinion, but I tried to back it up with some data. But the Gizzard Gary's out there. Good evening. So the way you portray yourself in public, and I don't think you have to be, portray yourself as a tactical operator, big muscles, tight t-shirt. It's just kind of not looking like a victim. And Brian Bridges, good evening. So how, and I think training in some way, whether it's like a martial arts training, self-defense training, if you carry training so you have confidence in what you're doing, and being aware of your surroundings. One of the articles I kind of read, it was kind of a short article, but it was a victimologist. So they look at, it's similar to a criminologist, and I can't remember exactly how they differentiated themselves, but there were three categories of a victim, or I don't know can't remember how they put it, but there's a low likelihood, a medium, and then the high likelihood. And it was kind of simply, the lowest are people who don't travel far from home and don't put themselves, they live in better neighborhoods and don't go walking out in dark alleys. The medium likelihood of being a victim was stayed fairly close to home, and I should have written them down. I'm pretty sure there is a link to this, so if you search through those.
It's not always like being a victim is a personality trait, or like a something that's part of your psychology or psyche or something. Sometimes it's just circumstances. You could be an able and aware person who gets distracted on the phone or something, walks into a certain situation where you become, or you start to fulfill enough check boxes on the list that you fall into the victim, or the opportunity for a victim, or something like that. So I don't get it. It's not like you have to be a victim personality type to be a victim. Sometimes it can just happen by not paying attention and walking into something.
Yeah. And then the highest was basically live in a bad neighborhood and you walk through dark alleys at night. That's you're most likely to be a victim. And some of this, there's the calculating criminal, but there's also kind of along, like G-Webs was saying, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
The opportunist, the person who sees like, oh, like, here's a place for me to snatch a phone, or I'm going to grab that purse.
And also the thing that you can't account for is a chemical imbalance, whether that's induced through drugs or a naturally occurring mental illness. I didn't really look into that. I have dealt with some of those types, but I think because I am maybe portray more confidence and have a larger size, haven't been attacked, or when I've had to deal with them, can kind of feel out whether I need to be how do I say it? Come at them with the soft hand or with the hard hand to basically just kind of get them to go away. But that's things you can prepare for but can't account for, because you don't know. Crazy could show up at your door for no reason. You don't know why there are those few stories where somebody, a mentally ill person is pounding on somebody's door and they don't know each other, and they try and break in because in that mentally ill person's head, something's going on where they either hate the person they don't know or feel they need to get into that house. And I don't, there's
not like a real clear intent. They're not thinking clearly. They're just acting or whatever.
Whatever fantasy or voice is telling them to do whatever. There wasn't, in the stories that I've seen in the past, there didn't seem to really be a reason for that to happen other than the guy was, it was a crazy person.
For a long time, that kind of stuff was undiagnosed, and then once they started applying science to it and doing real research, they figured out it's 9mm itis, and it comes from being around 9mm too long or choosing the caliber.
Yeah, and in the victimology, it's like the low and the medium people that lock their doors. In the high are people who don't lock their front doors. So you're kind of making it easier for yourself to be a victim.
It's probably a bit of experience too, or like assumption or whatever that's called. Like, you don't have to be like a victim mentality to just not realize that bad people don't just hang out in front of their house like a lemonade stand and be bad to people, in front of their house. They go out and wander. Sometimes they go into good neighborhoods to steal stuff or get chased down a neighborhood, or just are out walking around and decide to do something horrible. And you don't get to choose that. So yeah, if you stick in your house, then you have less potential for that, but it's never not a thing, right? It's never completely gone.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you should be a shut-in and avoid the world. You have to find that happy medium of risk. And
well, imagine if you stayed shut in back in the day, we would call that like a haunted house or like the crazy person, or what I mean? Like people in the neighborhood would know that you never leave. Yeah. And then you'd be the same way, potentially a victim based on that.
And I, in my younger days, I used to not lock my front door. When I lived in Pullman, which is a college town, there's not a lot of, there is some crime there. It's a really small town, and the college is basically the town. And I didn't lock my apartment door until one day I was with my girlfriend, and another friend walked in when we were busy, and so I started having to lock my door. But there were, even that was also around the time where there started to be break-ins where people would walk in, somebody left their door unlocked and they would go in. And I guess Pullman is kind of an example of, I was thinking about this just before the chat. Now I can't remember exactly why I wanted to make the point, but I had, I was teaching karate and I had a student who was walking home through the by the Greek houses. That's the fraternities. And he was attacked by, I think it was 4 guys. They were drunk, and I can't remember if he was drunk or not. I was like walking home from the bar or something. It was late at night, walking alone, and he was able to defend himself and get out of the situation. But it's would seem to be safe, but he was kind of doing an unsafe activity, walking by himself. And but he had training, which helped him get out of the situation. And it really did affect him afterwards, that he realized that, I was, as his instructor, I was kind of proud of him to be able to handle the situation and, and save himself. But for him, it really kind of shook him up that he realized he could have killed one of them, and he didn't like that. He was put in a bad situation, and he protected himself, but he realized what could have happened if things had gone sideways, where maybe he had hurt one of them really badly, or ended up killing one of them. And it really kind of shook him. And I think he did kind of get over that, and he understood that he was he wasn't doing anything wrong, he was just protecting himself. But that was kind of, I think, an example of, he may have been, he was walking alone in the dark by himself, but the people he ran into were drunk. And that's kind of fits into the chemical imbalance, where if they were sober, maybe he just walked by and everybody nods, but they were drunk, so maybe they were feeling frisky and decided to mess with a guy he was a smaller stature, but he, through high school, he was a wrestler, so he was a tough kid. And then built upon that with martial arts, and so he was able to take care of himself.
Now, was he able to calm down by just not recreating circumstances? I mean, that wasn't like, oh no, in order to get home, I got to walk past the bullies every day. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't make friends with them, and I'm going to have to solve this. This was just a rare thing, right? So was he just able to deal with it by not creating the circumstances again, or was it like something that bothered him continued on?
I'm not sure. Cause this is more than 20 years ago, so I'm kind of reaching back. And then it was just before he had left, and then a little bit after that, I left, moved away. So I haven't been in touch with him kind of since, like, right after all that happened. And I was trying to remember, because I know he did a full contact tournament, but I can't remember if that was just before this happened or just after this happened. It was right around the same time. I'm thinking it was afterwards. So he, I know right after it happened, he did testing for rank to move up in rank, and you could kind of see that he had lost some of that confidence as he's kind of working through what happened. Because that came up during testing, and I explained to the other black belts, hey, this is just what he went through, and I'm fairly confident. I think he probably got over it, just from kind of what I knew of him. I kind of knew him. We were from the same town, and I sort of knew him from high school. I think. I know he went to the same high school. He was younger than me, a little bit younger than me, but I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't fully answer that question, unfortunately. There was another article about convicted rapists, and I should have put a link to it. I didn't, because reading through it was infuriating and disgusting. I was disgusted by they did something similar with the criminals, where they took convicted sex offenders and then had them tell stories, ask them questions, and then they would tell how they chose victims. And the things they said is just, I still now makes my skin crawl. And so I didn't put a link, and I probably should have put a link to that article. But there was a similarity in the way they chose their victims, but there was a little bit of difference with the criminals. If somebody, looked at them, then that would tend to show a little bit of confidence. In the sex offenders, if a woman looked at them and then, made eye contact and then looked away, a lot of them said they knew that was their victim. That's because they looked away and didn't keep eye contact. Excuse me. For those ones, it's kind of, I hate even talking about them, but so women that would look at them, to make eye contact and then let them know, that's what some of the articles about the regular will say, the sex offender and the regular. If somebody made eye contact, that would tend to dissuade them, because they knew they were seen, and so they couldn't sneak up or anything. But with the sex offender, even if they were looked at, if they looked away, then that showed there wasn't that confidence there, and they knew that's who they would choose as a victim. And then, like I said, the stories are just awful. And that kind of reminds me of my friend's mother. She used to work in Seattle, and she was walking to her car, and a guy started following her, and she got to her car, and he was coming up to her, but she carried a nickel-plated .38. She pulled out her .38, and he stopped following her. So that's a story that, partly because it's somebody that I knew, but it's a great example of how a gun is the great equalizer. It gives somebody of maybe a weaker stature the fighting chance. And I think that, along with that, the understanding how to use that gun, having the training to back that up, can give you that confidence where you are able to handle a situation. But it shouldn't, I'm not saying now that you have a gun, you can walk through, the darkest alleys in any city just because you can.
It's not like a talisman and reward or that repels evil from you. I think it's some people just need the experience. You'd said it before about awareness or something, and once you understand the basics, that it's not like there's, anyway, you understand the scenario that there's bad guys being bad and they're choosing victims, and there's things you can do to take yourself off that list, essentially. Then that awareness is the same as telling somebody you don't have to be a black belt ninja. You can do things ahead of time that take you out of the potential, and there's a lot less risk of anything. And so that just knowing that right away means that when someone's getting out of a parked car in a parking lot, maybe they're making the decision to drive around a little bit more in the parking lot until a space opens up that's closer to the entrances and it's lit, instead of not paying attention to that circumstance and parking far away in the not lit part of the parking lot and risking that, that moment or those moments of insecurity or something. So it's something like, the awareness can be key to where they realize that their influence doesn't have to be dominating the situation. It doesn't have to be the number one thing in their mind all the time. But by making simple decisions based on awareness, they can just take themselves out of 80% of the scenarios where they would be in the circumstances of a victim. Not that they are a victim or their mentality is that of victimhood or that they're paranoid. It's just that if you're not paying attention, you park in that dark part of the parking lot, just being oblivious to that scenario, that potential, then repeat myself. But I think that just a little bit of awareness can give people it doesn't have to be confidence, just the awareness to not fall into traps, I guess, or fall into the scenario, the equation of what the bad people are looking for.
Yeah, that was another thing that came up with the criminals that were showing the people walking. If somebody was looking down at their phone and not looking around, then you are not aware of what's going on. Somebody can walk up right behind you and you don't know until something happens. That's what Brian Bridges is saying too, that cell phone constant use doesn't help with both men and women.
There was a time, I'm sure, I think I can remember, when they would say, get somebody on the phone and walk through the parking lot with somebody on the speakerphone with you so that you're technically not alone, but there's that concept versus watching Instagram and being completely tied into whatever it is you're looking at.
Yeah, because definitely, because one, your attention isn't, from the other, you're talking to somebody, but you're, you can still be looking. Yeah, and like for your parking lot example, when I pull into a parking lot, I'm looking for, I don't always necessarily park the closest. I'll tend to park where it's easier to get in and out of. So if there's a lot of cars and it's tight,
easier for the car to get in and out of the parking lot,
Yeah.
not easier to get in and out of the store. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm looking at everything in the parking lot, looking at the other cars, are there people? And it's not a checklist. It's just, as I basically scan the parking lot. And if there's something out of the ordinary, then that's a noted. A group of people standing over here, they just might be, friends talking, but I know there's a group of people standing over there. So I probably wouldn't park next to the group of people if possible. I had one time I was coming out of a Bass Pro Shop in Tacoma, and I had my son with me, and he was probably about 5. But we get in the car, and as soon as I sit down, I see 3 people coming into the parking lot, kind of walking across the parking lot, and they split up. But they're all, they're all walking in the same directions, but they split up, so they're all walking apart from each other, which is odd. And I had my window down, and I start to back up, and one of the guys starts walking over towards my car and looks at me like he's going to say something. He kind of raises his head. So I said, "Hey," and then drove off. I wasn't going to. It was an odd situation where 3 people came into the parking lot. You could tell they were they were together, and you could tell they were still kind of together, but they, for some reason, had separated and were walking through different parts of the parking lot. And I know he wanted, and I didn't really care, especially since I had my kid with me, so I just nodded hello, and kept moving. And for the sex offenders, that's one thing that they will do is start a conversation with somebody, a possible victim, to hold them there. And and they'll talk, say anything. Do you know where this is? Or
Yeah, they
can you help me
leverage
find my
like the
puppy?
social thing where people are polite to each other and like, oh, well, this person needs help. They're asking a question or whatever. I'm obligated to
Yeah.
stand here. You're allowed to be rude. And if you didn't start or instigate the conversation or you're uncomfortable, you're allowed to just walk away without a word. You don't have to engage in the whole back and forth. Like you say, they're depending on that. They prey on people being slave to that back and forth.
And that's what, like Ted Bundy, the serial killer, that's what he would do. He would do, like, he had a fake cast he put on his arm, and then he would ask women, can you help me load this into the car? Or I think he had a van. And when they would load something in the van, he would push them in
Probably
the
a
van.
station wagon or some kind of pickup truck.
Yeah.
People in vans are usually pretty decent people.
But he would, because women are more, kind of in the articles, the tendency of a woman is to want to help. So he would use that. Predators will tend to try and use that.
I don't know if you're breaking up. Or I'm breaking
GTP
up.
said,
It broke up.
it's
for
probably me. GTP said your intuition is your best friend. If the hair on the back of your neck stands up, listen to it. Exactly. Yes.
And what's the alternative to that? Like, oh no, I was rude to a complete stranger. Well, maybe that stranger needs to learn that you don't walk up on people quietly and start a conversation out of nowhere. Maybe it's inappropriate to ask about this in this parking lot or in a in a garage or something. I don't know, wherever other circumstance is, right? So I agree. You don't have to walk away with everyone going, oh wow, that was a great conversation. Like, if you don't feel like it, get the hell out of there.
And what's the worst that will come out of that really is
that's the same way I'm saying it, yeah.
Maybe somebody thinks you're a jerk, somebody you don't
you
know
don't know.
and probably will never see again.
Well, I'm saying, and you're probably helping them, because if they really think they got the right to just walk up to anybody and start conversations, well, guess what? They don't. They can want whatever they want, but that doesn't mean the rest of the world has to comply with it.
And I've done that to somebody asked me something, and it's usually it'll just be something I don't care about or something I don't, something I think is stupid. I don't want to spend time. So I'll, just try to politely say, yeah, I don't know. And then move on.
If somebody calls you, are you obligated to answer the phone and spend part of your existence dealing with their intrusion? Or are you allowed to just not answer the phone or pick it up once you figure out what it is? Do you have some obligation to politely reply before you hang up? It's the same kind of thing in real life. Some people are going to say, nope, it's always social etiquette. You always want to be polite, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, fine. But there's robots and there's a-holes and there's criminals out there. And I don't have to be polite to robots, a-holes, or criminals. So if somebody is going to not be, is just a good person, but is going to approach someone or essentially be in the same role as those three, well, then they need to figure out that they're looking just like a criminal asshole or whatever, right? They need to get the awareness that there's other ways to start conversations or approach people. So
yeah, and that's like you were saying about the phone. That's how scammers. That's how they prey on people. Is either well, I guess there's more than one way it happens, but either they try and bully you into paying them money, whether it's the IRS scam where they say they're from the IRS. So it still gets me that people will think that will fall for the scam, and the scammers want phone cards. So supposedly somebody from the IRS is telling you to go get phone cards from the store to pay the IRS. And there's people that actually fall for it. I don't answer my phone. Everything goes through the answering machine, and I'll listen to the answering machine answer. So if it's something I need to pick up, then if it's not, I'll ignore it. If I get a call on my cell phone, everybody I know has their own ring. So I know who it is without looking at my phone. And then I
But
can
that's
kind of,
only if they're calling from their phone, like if they're calling you from jail or from an
Yeah.
apartment, or I mean from a hotel or something.
yeah. So I won't.
But they probably know that you're not going to answer an unknown number.
Yeah, if and then also might just be if I don't feel like talking to anybody, then I won't answer. But that's why I prefer, if I know you, texting. And then if it's something that text me, and then if it's something that's kind of long, so it's hard to so we're not typing back and forth, so then I'll call so that we can talk. But yeah, you don't have to answer your phone. And then if somebody wants something that even the IRS won't call you. There are ones that are police. And then I had mentioned a little while ago about scammers using AI. And what they're doing is they'll find somebody who has a lot of videos online, and then get an AI to copy the voice, and then call, like the kid, they'll call the parents and say, we've got your kid. And then the AI voice will sound like the kid saying, oh, help me, they want money and whatever.
Or it'll just be the kid going, hey, I'm stuck somewhere, I need money, wire it to me.
Yeah.
And then hang up or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a code word. Get a code word so that your kids and your spouse, your good friends, you have some kind of code word. Scammer might be able to program a voice, but they're not going to know about the camping trip when you were 16, or you know what I mean? Like they're not going to know about that. I would say like chocolate cake or mashed potatoes or something like that. Just have some code word that you're going to bring up when you're actually talking, because that is a thing. That's literally a thing, and you don't really. I think you need 110 words or something to do a run at that.
Yeah, and for my wife, it's just, somebody calls and say they kidnapped me, just hang up. Whether they did kidnap me or not, whether it's real or not, just hang up. Well, I had a great run. Love you, but don't deal with them. And you can hang up the phone on somebody. You do not have to talk to anybody you do not want to. I've had even not quite scammers, but like somebody selling magazines. And I told them, hey, I lived this long without this magazine, I don't need it. And usually I don't let it get that far, but sometimes I'll feel like talking to them just to see what the tactic is.
So what do you think about flashlights, personal alarms, and whistles?
They're okay. Flashlight, to me, the flashlight would be the most useful out of that. I don't know like the personal alarm and the whistles. Those depend on, is anybody going to hear it? Is anybody going to care?
No, not necessarily. I hear you, but I don't think that's the case. A bad guy, unless they're ultimately confident or just completely twisted, if your awareness is going to be a discriminating feature or a tactic that gets them to not bother you, and then your pattern, you change route. We didn't talk about You're walking through a parking lot or something, you park and you're walking towards the elevator and there's something weird, you're allowed to change direction and walk to the far parking lot or the stairway or some other route to get out of that parking lot, or get back in your car and leave. And you're allowed to change tactics like that. So anyway, that bad guy, unless they're completely dedicated or completely warped, you start making noise or showing any kind of signs of again, like a porcupine, your quills go up, they're walking away. They got other things to do. They don't want to get stuck to nothing. So flashlights, you would start turning on a flashlight and just looking around, and you can shine it at somebody and you can always say sorry, right? But if somebody's walking at you and you shine a really powerful flashlight at them, up at them, and now it's on them and they're having to go, hey, what are you doing? Or what are you doing? Then you can go, oh, sorry, but you're really close to me and I didn't know what's going on. Maybe you didn't see me. You don't have to say nothing. You can just go, whatever. It's a flashlight. Nobody can get mad at a flashlight being shined at them unless they're, again, trying to play something. But the alarms and stuff, I don't think someone has to be on the other end of that. I think that's just like the quills going up on a porcupine. Nobody has to see the person the wolf get stuck. The wolf knows it got stuck. So you start walking and somebody gets about 10 feet from you with some kind of intent that you can't determine, and you pull your personal alarm out, it starts going, and it usually sounds way different than a car alarm. That person is now going to have to walk through that personal alarm and shut it off to get to you. And now that's all that more. Like, you've just increased that whole thing. Plus, you've shown them 100%. You are freaked out. Same thing with a whistle. I don't care what anybody says. Oh, I look foolish because I blew a whistle a bunch of times in a parking lot. No, you taught that asshole that you don't just get to walk next to people and be oblivious to their awareness in the world. That you don't, you can, if you're intimidating, maybe you shouldn't be walking right up on people, like, just because you know what your intent are. You're freaking people out by the way you're doing stuff. So if somebody freaks out and whistles at you, good, you needed that. But if somebody just blows a whistle because somebody was oblivious and was just going to walk past a little old lady or a bunch of kids, well, then screw them. They needed to know that. And again, the quills coming out, you shouldn't be embarrassed by that. That just shows the world, like, oh, that's somebody who wasn't about to get wailed on today because all they needed to do was blow a whistle about 30 times in a parking lot. And I'm going to start carrying a whistle because a whistle is zero tech. Like, unless there's snow in it, it's working.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, I'm not sure. And I'm not telling anyone not to. The reason that I was, I'm not sure about it is, if you look at rapists, they're raping somebody while they're screaming.
Well, I hear you, but that's the
or they'll
exception.
They'll punch them into submission.
Sure. There's there's the person that'll just come up and knock you down because you got the alarm. But guess what? You were gonna get knocked down anyway at that point.
So I'm not telling anybody not to have these. Just be aware that it's not.
I'm for them, and I say use them almost recklessly, because again, you're training people just the same way you yell at a dog when it starts doing something wrong, and then you have to do nothing else but yell at it, startle it. Again, I say normalize blowing whistles and bothering people when they're weird to you in parking lots, because people need to wake up. If they're 2023 paying attention to their phone so much that they're freaking people out, then they're causing tension in the world. You know what I mean? Like, you're allowed to be comfortable knowing that you can blow off a whistle a bunch of times or shine a flashlight around. At least that's I'm super pro it.
Kind of a tactical Karen. You're not Karen at everybody, just Karen at specific times.
No, I don't think that's a Karen at all, though. That's the thing. I don't think that's.
Well, no, I just
Karen
mean
somebody
the yelling
like,
at
hey,
people.
I don't like the way that you parked. Wait, you mean, I'm not saying yelling at people. I'm just saying blowing a whistle. But again, that's blowing up your quills. That's not Karen. Karen is the one who walks over to you and puts up her quills. At least that's my impression. If you're just the victim, I'm not shaming no victims here. If you're a victim and you overreact, oh, well, good for you. I'm happy that you made sure that your whistle works. Because what's the actual harm there? Nothing. You've taught that other person that they're behaving in a way that scares people. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You're not obligated by any means, but I just don't want people to even think twice about blowing off a whistle or pulling those electric alarms. Cost like $4 or $1 at a 99-cent store. Put them on your keychains and you yank it. The worst even if you are embarrassed, you go, oh, I'm sorry, I accidentally pulled my alarm. It has nothing to do with the fact that you menacingly walked towards me in a parking lot. I just accidentally pulled my alarm if you're really concerned about their feelings.
No, I think that's a great point, is never be embarrassed to protect yourself. That's and I hate to make it sound like I'm picking on women, but it's, from what I've seen, those are the people that tend to be, don't want to, how do you put it?
Like alter from the norm or be the loud thing for no reason type of thing.
But when it comes to protecting yourself, it doesn't matter. That's the most important thing. Whether for 10
Like,
seconds,
if you walk into a
you
parking
think
lot
you
with
look foolish, it doesn't matter.
or impolite, right? Like if you go into a parking lot with your radio blasting and the windows down and everybody else is trying to live their life and you disrupt the parking lot for the amount of time that you're in there with your car running, then you're an a-hole. But if you're concerned that someone is walking towards you and it's not your job to have to know their intentions and you blow off your personal alarm, that's not the same thing. So, same as like a baby crying. No one's going to go, hey, shut up, baby, you ruined the peace and quiet. Everyone knows that's a baby and that's just a factor of life. And unfortunately, decided to cry right then. But that's the same thing as a car backfiring. Some people are going to go, oh, there's no excuse. Car should never backfire. And then other people realize that you don't choose that. It just happens. And, you're embarrassed that it happened, but no one holds it against you that your car backfired. Again, nobody should hold it against you that you decided to blow off a personal alarm because somebody walked menacingly at you. But again, I'm pro. Let's get everybody. That's I think it's like a big, soft, nerfy bumper for society. Like, what's the worst that happens there? People wake up and figure out that, hey, when I run through a parking lot with my face into my phone, other people don't know my intentions. And, maybe I could walk a little, differently a path or, take a different route or not look at my phone all the time so I don't get an alarm blasted at me every time I run up on somebody. But I'm just saying, I'm trying to give benefit of the doubt to people because I think someone who's intimidated or timid, I guess, is going to look at the world like, oh, I survived 4 attacks this afternoon, when in reality, it's just 4 people didn't even know they were standing there and were busy, and were rushed into their car. And that, the point of view from that person who's timid is that 4 people ran up to them and then they definitely avoided, some kind of altercation. So I'm just trying to say I don't think it's 100% all bad people running around.
No, I think you're right. And like, with the whistle, like I said, I wasn't saying that they don't have their place or you shouldn't use them. It's just, I was thinking about the aggressors who don't,
who are going to go right past it. Yeah. And I'm not saying they're like magic either. They're not like a gun. Just because you got a gun, big whoop. Sometimes you're just giving a gun to a bad guy if they're the wrong person with the gun, I guess. But you don't know that until it happens. And it's not like anybody can train for that.
That's where it's important to understand how to use, if you have a gun, how to use it, when to use it. And probably harder part is being able to use it, because
there are comfortable or like,
there are people who will pull the gun and use it, wave it around and say, I've got a gun, but they're not willing to pull the trigger and they will lose that gun.
I hear you, but in reality, we would, because we have people that hate our ability to own guns and they want to marginalize gun owners into reckless and wrong. If it were happening that bad guys were taking people's open carry guns, if victims were having their guns taken from them and used against them, it would be all over everywhere. There'd be some like Charleston loophole garbage that they come up with to call that, and they'd be pushing that sore as often as they could. So that's why I know that it doesn't happen. Now, if somebody like one of these channels that exploits the fear and exploits the concern that people have, and they constantly look at security tapes, there's channels that have devoted themselves to only looking at security tapes of altercations of the 300 million people in this country. They look at the few security tapes that they can find of issues that really happen between people, and that's the concern I have is, some people get like concerned that
Well,
there's nothing. It's like the Wild West out there, when in reality, a bunch of people are cool to each other always. And then every once in a while, there's weird stuff that happens. And sometimes it's not just spouses and people that hate each other from work or people that have bad drug deals. Sometimes it's random. But, if you think about it, most of the violence is people that hate each other from work, people that are married to each other, or people that are doing drug deals. And they refuse to make the drug deal one, change that politically. They don't do anything for mental health for the other two, and then they exploit the circumstances, the consequences of those areas. I mean, I'm sure I'm simplifying it a lot, but
No, I won't watch those channels. It's basically fear porn.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's worse.
And then
it's horrible.
And then some of the channels are profiting off the fear porn. I don't like to watch those kinds of videos. I will watch them from time to time just to try and learn from them what happened, maybe try and figure out why it happened, the way it happened. And
that's horrible. It's like watching pool and going, well, if I watch somebody play pool, so therefore I'm better at pool. I guess it's possible, but in reality, you just got to practice playing pool a bunch.
Yeah. But it's kind of like an after action report. So you can learn from it, and it's not the same as doing drills on what happened, but
that'd be even worse. That'd be horrible. You definitely don't want to see a scenario and then run that scenario over and over again. That's completely the hammer looking for nails, because now you've decided you've seen one circumstance of possibilities happen and how it played out, and you've practiced your perfect scenario to that situation, and now you're looking for that situation to play out. That's the worst kind of training scar, the worst kind of horrible thing you could do to yourself, in my opinion, is to just watch what other things have already happened and then duplicate them. I guess if you want to understand all the stuff that's happening, but the same way that people aren't, if you were to go to a place where, what do they call it, like a commune where hippies are hanging out, and there was a bunch of hippies being like, love each other, everybody's perfect, and nobody's ever wrong to each other. I don't know, maybe there's some religion that I just call hippies, people that are like obliviously, comfort, whatever that's word, like, just they're not paying attention to the whole realities of everything. People are going to go, oh, well, that's ridiculous. That's outside the norm. You can't listen to that person. But then they're going to go to the exact same like distance from norm to go look at only the examples of people being bad to each other. And these, like, you call it fear porn. I call it worse than that. They're exploiting that characteristic of humans, and they're pushing on the rift. They're at the same time, they'll probably say we should all be together, but then they're going to constantly make their entire living off of focusing on the rift. And if you only look at the differences, then that's all you see. And those people they're horrible for that, I think. But that's where you wouldn't listen to somebody who's like, all people love each other. So why would you give any credence to the people who say we all are probably hate each other, and here's why you should be aware, be skeptical of everybody you meet? Only Marines have to be ready to kill everybody they meet, and they volunteer for it. Like, let them take that burden from you. Like, go ahead and love everybody. You'd be better off loving everybody you meet, because in this world, at least in this country, 300 million people, it's going to be tougher for you to find people that hate you than it is to find people that love you.
Yeah, I still think I don't know, we might be talking about slightly different things, but I think there are things you can learn, but you obsessing over it.
Yeah, that's a good way to say
where
it. Yeah.
You're
being aware
hampering
versus
your own life.
That's the norm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking for data points. I'm not looking for I don't
patterns.
Yeah. Well,
our conclusion.
Well, no, just I'm not sure how to put it, but I'm looking, trying to look at it factually than emotionally. So this happened, that happened, and this correlates with some other data point, rather than making that your focus of, everything's bad, everybody's
Yeah, like
killing everybody.
emotionally, like you watch an altercation at a gas station, emotionally, you're like, I'm concerned every time I go to a gas station. But tactically, you're going to be like, well, that was at night, and that was, after a football game let out, and I was wearing the colors of the other team, or that person, I should say, that person was wearing the colors of the other, when you start looking at the reality of it, then it's not like every gas station has the possibility of something happened there. And,
Oh, I think that's about what I had for the topic.
I only know that one study where they always talk about where guns come from, and that was some study where they asked criminals. It wasn't really victims, I guess. It was more of where they get their guns. But those kind of studies where once people are already in jail, and I guess they're just bragging to their counselors or whoever, their sociologists or whoever these people are, like they'll tell them whatever. So I've seen these studies; they're pretty interesting. What do they deal with for the people that are just like, well, I got nothing else to do, I'm in jail, so I'm just going to make up stories and tell this person these stories?
Yeah, that's why, kind of like I said, when you don't know exactly how truthful they are, but when you see similarities in stories over a wide
That's true. Yeah.
Selection, then to me, that would tend to show a pattern that is correct rather than something that's made up.
Yeah, that's true.
And I didn't mean to ignore the chat out there, but I kind of ignored the chat out there. Sorry to everybody.
A lot of people out there today. So are these, are we going to start the bracket now, or when does this happen?
No, we had to put off the bracket. The bracket was broken. Just trying to go back through the comments here.
Woods had a lot of good things to say about turkey bacon. GTP was talking about having them kind of set a trap, I suppose, and then busting out of there right before.
Yeah, I saw that one. Who's a third world country in a bar, and somebody convinced him to stay. And he got a funny feeling, and they tried to keep him there, but he's able to slip out. Yeah, that's the one problem with. I don't want to tell people that they shouldn't drink. It's up to you, but it alters your perception of what's going on. You're having a good time, and you think they're having a good time, but you can get yourself in trouble. And I don't.
Having, what do they call a driver? The designated driver is good for that also, right? For that, you got somebody who's got a good rational decision making for all reasons, right? Not just for driving.
Yeah, and I used to, in my younger days, go out and binge drink and that. I was more of I mellowed out even more the more I drank. So, I would just end up, laughing a lot, laughing at people. So I tended not to get into situations like that.
Well, the booze is going to lose your inhibitions or your whatever, and then you're going to go to your tendency or whatever. So yeah, if you're not like an angry person, you're not going to go towards aggressive stuff, I wouldn't think.
Yeah,
my experience, most people just get goofy and funny and flippant or whatever the words are.
Yeah. Gunmetal Guy USA said he has a hypothetical question for a friend. You can ask your question. Let us know what your question is.
So I have a door, right? And on that door, I had tacked on some felt for many years, and then I had a bunch of patches on that felt. And then felt isn't the best material to use. It works good at the beginning, but it loses its like structure or whatever. It starts to get all loose and floppy. So I took it off the door a while back, and it didn't take off the tacks. So there's these little tacks, little nails with flat heads, right? That are about as far off the door as a piece of felt would have been. So there haven't been an issue or nothing. But the other day I was walking past there and jabbed my arm on there, and it got snagged on the piece of thing. That's the way you wouldn't want it to happen. And it like, I don't know, like it jabbed the heck out of me in a way that like is more than horrible. Like it jabbed a tack into me and then dragged, you know what I mean? Like it didn't just poke me,
yeah.
it like tore. So I've got this like, and it's at least it's on my like forearm, on the outside of my forearm, you know, where you'd expect it to like brush against the door. But it's been a while since I've had like a, you know, normally I get poked from like a nail or something, like, and it's a different kind of cut. This is driving me nuts. So anyway, when's the last time you had a an unexpected kind of tear injury, a ripping, and it's, you know, it stopped bleeding pretty quick. It's right in the muscle and stuff. It's just that it's gonna be a while before this one heals, I think.
I don't know.
For me, it's been a while. I can't think of the last time I got really. I've got poked a few times, but I haven't been like jabbed.
I've got.
Like this.
It looks like it's even healed up. I had a little cut right here in my finger. I have a little Civivi knife, and I was sitting at the computer and I was flipping it open and closed, and you know, just open and closed as I forget what I was doing, and just kind of thinking. So I was, you know, just playing with it, and when I closed it, it swiped across my finger.
Just sliced a chunk off.
Well, it cut, and then it's kind of where you feel that little burn, but it didn't bleed at first, and it's kind of
nice,
wondering, is it going to bleed? And then it started bleeding. But it's healed over, so it wasn't that bad. But
those are pretty good. I think you become stronger from those, because then your muscle just, what's that called, when it heals up, and then it should be stronger, really.
Yeah, well, that's how your muscles get stronger, is they tear,
right?
And then when they heal, they come back thicker.
Yeah.
C&T Designs and Arms is out there. Hey, Coop.
So you think it would work if you took like acupuncture needles, but like a brush, and like poke that into you or laid on it, and then would that help you create bigger muscles by poking them?
No, I think it has to happen in a specific way.
Okay.
Whenever it heals.
All right, now you got your question.
All right. So Gunmetal Guy's asking, I have a friend who has a concealed carry license. He carries at home and wants to go 24/7 like God intended. Should he carry at work? We're using it means fired, other troubles. That
well, don't open carry.
Depends on, yeah, if there's one way to look at it. If you need it to save your life and you save your life, is that more important than that job? You know, you weigh that risk. If not having it, again, there could be outliers where something happens that nobody could ever account for.
Right. If you work in a bad neighborhood and it makes sense to carry, versus you work at some hospital and there's never been an instance ever.
Yeah. So that if you need to use it, to me, if you feel you want to have it, if you ever used it and it saved your life, that's more important to me personally than being fired. Because if you don't have it and you're killed,
Yeah,
that's
you
worse
don't
than
get
being fired.
you don't get some kind of bonus for being right. But you just got what's the potential of that? Again, if you work at a place that deals with cash and you're the night crew, that's different. Like even working at like a 7-Eleven or working as a night crew of a place that does valuable stuff and you're just maintenance or resupply or something during the night. Or even if it's like a construction site where you don't know, you're going around and filling the fuel in the construction vehicles overnight so that everybody's ready in the morning, right? And you don't know when you're opening up a gate what's behind there, if it's $1 billion worth of tools and equipment or if it's a vacant lot most of the time. So in those kind of circumstances, they tell you not to carry. That's a different circumstance than, again, you work at a hospital and there's security all over the place and there's never been an incident ever at that hospital before. And you're wearing scrubs. What are you going to do? Like, I think those are two completely different situations. So it's kind of, you got to figure out where you're at in that spectrum. You have like realistic potential versus like, I mean, I agree with you 100%. If it's reality, you might need it, then it's a no brainer. But, well, I'll just repeat myself now.
Yeah, you just have to understand that if it's not allowed and you get caught, you could get fired. But again, is the risk of that, does that outweigh
And then
not
I'm
having
not
it
an
if you need
advocate of a
it?
gun is all you got. You got so many other things. We're humans that are super adaptable and witty and smart. So, especially if you're dealing with, I mean, I guess it depends on the circumstances, but bad guys are going to assume all you got is a gun. Well, then a cup of hot coffee is going to be unexpected. Like there's other things you can do that are available. Where do you work? Is there something you can knock over on them or something? You know what I mean? There's other things you can do besides depend on one item that isn't magic or nothing. It's just super useful.
Yeah, and I'm kind of talking in extremes, just the rather than playing out all the
the edge
variables.
is not the, and that's the thing. 90% of the time we live in this situation, it's that 10% or whatever less that usually we got to worry about and we can't anticipate. But that's usual. I mean, I've had jobs where I walked into people's houses every day, and how do you calculate the risk there? I don't think it's possible because there's very little risk, but at the same time, it's completely, I don't know what to call that, random or potential is there. And even though it's very low potential, it's like winning the lottery. You're probably not going to win, but when you win, you got $1 million. So it's the other way around. It's probably not going to happen. When it happens, you don't come out the other end. So it kind of matters. Being asked to take up slack of the failing society and defend yourself has been more consequences than committing the actual. I can't read it because there's a heart in front of it on my screen.
Oh, more consequences than committing the actual dang crime. Pure madness. Yeah, I was thinking about that today, and I'm not sure.
Well,
you hear
what's messed up is they're trying to demonize guns. So it's not defending yourself; it's defending yourself with a firearm. So that's where you go right back to like, what if you brought a slingshot? And then realistically, if somebody's messing with you, more than likely you'll be able to get a slingshot off. And again, most people, unless they're super determined to do whatever it is they're doing, aren't going to get past a slingshot or two to the body, another one in the face. So I'm not saying that's all you need is a slingshot, but if you're in a circumstance where they're going to blow off a slingshot in your bag, but I'm just using a weird scenario. I don't know the scenario there, but
there was the picture, I think, on Instagram of some third world country where I think it was something like a bank and an armored car delivery, and one of the guards standing outside had a slingshot drawn.
Oh no, I know the one you're talking about, like South America or someplace. I'm thinking more of like they make a slingshot where it's like a balloon material and then like a piece of plastic that has a hole in it, and it doesn't really look like a slingshot, but you take a ball bearing or just a marble in that thing, and I don't want to be, they say about hit by 22. I don't want to be hit by somebody with that rubber thing and a marble. Like screw that. do massive
So
damage.
would that be better than like mace or pepper spray?
No, because you have to use two hands and you have to be able to
Yeah.
aim it and you have to know that it's coming. You have to be able to manipulate it. It's almost useless. I'm just saying, like, compared to not have, compared to nothing, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But I'm not the biggest fan of mace because you can't get mace. You have to get, well, most of the time we have to get OC spray. And honestly, that's just a variable too. Some people grow up eating nice spicy food. So, pepper spray is going to be different for them. Some
What
people have just been sprayed like 30 times and you spraying them wrong. They've been sprayed right by cops and you're spraying them wrong. Like you don't even know how to use the thing. You're using it for the first time, panicking. Like they're not afraid of that. Like they're not afraid of having their feet and the air next to them sprayed. They've been really sprayed before. So I don't have
there
any
was
confidence in pepper spray at all. I like
there
whistles.
was a video on Instagram of a fight, some women fighting, and cop walks up and pepper sprays the group fighting, and they break up, move probably 10 feet over, start fighting again. Another cop comes up, sprays them again. They break up, move over like 5 feet, start fighting again.
Yeah. That's like throwing peppers into like, soup or something, like throwing pepper spray to grandma. It's kind of pointless, I bet. We're used to that already.
Yeah. I don't know. I think about carrying pepper spray or a mace, just because.
Sometimes for dogs and stuff where you can't reason with them, you can't get away, and can't like deathfully, what do they call it, parkour your way from a dog coming at you. Sometimes it'll work for that, but I'm not a biggest fan of like ruining a dog either.
When I think about it, it's more a situation of a woman. I don't want to have to punch a woman, so I would rather if I could mace them to get them to stop rather than punching them into submission. But I don't like, I don't like having something in my hands because I'd rather have my hands free to deal with something. And also it's going to stink up the area. So there's, the wind changes and now you have maced yourself or, pepper sprayed yourself. There's a chance of that. So I go back and forth. And I know people that are squared away and that, they have a gun, but they also have a spray for the in-between situations. And I don't know. Cause I was thinking about it again just the other day. Well, maybe. And then it's like, nah, I don't.
Have you ever had it go off in your pocket or bag or something? Or just on the shelf at home?
No.
I had, the kind where you have the push button, but it kind of twists to the side and there's like a shelf so that it can't push down, but that's the only lock is like if that thing is twisted or not. I was rummaging around doing some stuff and pulling stuff out of a shelf, and I grabbed this can of pepper spray that's, how to describe it, it's like size of a D battery. It's something you put on a keychain. It's not super big, but it's keychain size. So it hadn't squirted, but the what do you call the push button or whatever had flipped from that safe shelf thing over to the normal just go ahead and push me mode, and it was just on a shelf with a bunch of loose shit. So worst case scenario, all I would have to do is like push on that shelf instead of pull everything off that shelf, and it would have squirted all around the shelf and everything. But I've had them squirt off in my pocket. I've had them squirt off in bags before, and when I bought some foam one time, I thought, oh, foam, because I've had them squirt off before, and it's horrible when you don't expect it and it's all over your stuff, right? It's annoying because it's kind of a sticky oil, so it doesn't like, it doesn't just evaporate like a stink bomb or something. So I sprayed the foam stuff one time in a giant kitchen of running water in a sink, thinking this is the perfect scenario. I'm going to spray it at that sink and I'm going to see how the foam sprays and I can just get on with the rest of the day. And I essentially like shut down the restaurant. It was pretty bad. So even though it's foam, like there's still quite a bit like being dispersed into the just air and everything. So it's a mess. So, and I guess I have squirted the gel at a wall before, and it was like squirting gel soap onto your hand. Like it was about that effective. I was like, oh, well, maybe if you got this thing right up next to somebody's eye or something, and then they held still, you could squirt them in the eye and it might affect them. But otherwise, it's so, what's the word? Like, it's so accurate that if you got it on their arm, unless they wipe their arm onto their face, they're not going to, it was ineffective. Yeah. So I've just never been a fan. But again, I'm more of a, most of the time we're talking parking lots, elevators, that kind of thing. And it's the bad guy is just as scared usually. An adamant or like an intention, like a really, what's the word? Like a hardcore criminal isn't going to be deterred by nothing. But a lot of crime is desperation or whatever, and you can just scare people away. And a lot of times we're just wrong. We're inaccurate. We think someone's coming to get us and they're just not paying attention. And that's, again, where you pepper spray somebody and it's like, oh my goodness, I was just getting in my car and I didn't realize you were there, and now you pepper sprayed me, and there's this whole thing. And it's not like you can take back pepper spray. But if you shine a light at somebody or you whistle really loud in their ear, you could be like, oh, well, I didn't realize the way you were coming at me. I thought you were trying to do something. Like, again, you can apologize for that if you really have to.
I had one time, I was probably 18. It was like right after high school, and I was riding a foot ferry across the bay. And I was waiting for the ferry, and there's a lady with her daughter, and it was just the three of us, and we're standing there, and she grabs her purse and kind of holds it close to her, and she kind of turns a little bit because I was taken aback because I don't have a criminal mindset, and it's not, that's, everything that we've talked about has, understand that I don't know the criminal mindset because I have never been a criminal. Well, I can't say that exactly, but I don't have the criminal mindset. So I'm looking at what other people are saying because
there's a difference between like
that.
I think I'm breaking up or you're breaking up. I think it's him breaking up.
Yeah, it's me.
Okay, now you're back.
And I was taken aback when she did that because I'm not a threat. But she didn't know. She doesn't know me. And I kind of understand
all that. We missed all that. You'd said something about
a
criminal, but
well, the waiting for the ferry, and the lady kind of holds her purse closer, and it took me off guard because I'm not a criminal, and I understood why she did that. I was a little offended personally because that's not what but I understood. But for her, she didn't know.
I get it.
So
but I also blame her because it's like that's defaulting to everybody's against you, lady. Like, come on. If you don't allow the world to be on your side, then everybody's out to get you. And that's sad.
Yeah, I don't know.
She can't be oblivious either, but it's also just bad tactics to like do that, because then again, somebody could be like, I don't know, trigger somebody, could warp somebody.
Yeah. Wednesday there will not be a mouse party. I have to work, so no chat on Wednesday.
Messed up.
Yeah.
Barbecue will probably steal your slot. Do something horrible.
He did a chat yesterday, didn't he?
I think so.
I thought I saw a notice. Let me see if I can see it. I thought I saw a notice for it. I don't know. Maybe it was something old that popped up. I don't know. I'll have to go check it out later. But I thought I saw he had done a chat.
A lot of times, legally, he's required to take them down afterwards. But ethically, he probably takes them down also.
Yeah, it looks like he did do one yesterday. So he might be back in action. All healed up. That's good. So
it's
you got anything
frustrating.
coming up? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going back to gunmetal's answers over there that if your thing is to be security, or if you're not allowed to have the option of booking out of there, like you've got responsibility or obligation at the place that you're at or with what you're doing, then it can get way more difficult, frustrating, if they put a bunch of weird prohibitions and rules on your thing. But it's easier said than done. But I like to just think that again, the gun is a great tool, and it's a convenient force multiplier, but our brain is our biggest ally, or our biggest asset, I guess. And there's other things that can be figured out, and you probably know the place intimately, at least compared to whoever's trying to get in or get stuff or whatever they're trying to do. I don't know the circumstances, but I have done security before. And for us, I don't know, I think it was more of, we weren't defending the place from bad guys as much as just being the consistent eyes of the place, so that if something was out of place or if something was wrong, we could alert the people who were not needed. If the elevator was broken, we didn't have to wait for somebody else to figure it out. We were constantly paying attention to that. If a mailbox was unlocked or something, they didn't have to worry about it being unattended, because they knew that there was a patrol that was going to go by every 15 minutes, and just be aware of stuff like that. And that's, I don't know, I think that's sometimes but if it's the other way around, I don't know, then it can be frustrating. But I don't have answers for everything, other than you usually know the place that we're in charge of or responsible for better than the people on the other side. And you can exercise or get some of the frustration alleviate the frustration, maybe that's the way I say it, by going through scenarios. Okay, if somebody bad was going to come in, are they here to get something? Are they here to prove something? Are they accidentally going to be here because they're looking for something else? So if you come up with the scenarios so that you've got a pretty good idea of what might happen, then you start to figure out, okay, like there's 7 things that might happen, and 3 of them can be prevented by parking the car here. And that's peace of mind, because now at least you've thought about a little bit of something. And like the one place I was working, we had this car, and I never needed it, but I had it if I needed it. So if I decided to park it in front of this one gate, well, I knew nobody was going to open that gate. Even if they did open the gate, they'd have to start the car and move it also, right? Nobody was going to get in that gate if I wasn't aware of it, right? And it would cause commotion. I'd be able to come over. I had a little golf cart thing. So in the winter that wouldn't have worked, but in the summer I didn't have to worry about it. Now, was it ideal? No. And when I wasn't supposed to do it because of fire engines and shit. But guess what? I knew that if a fire engine needed to get in there, they would smash that car out of the way. Like I knew that they didn't really care about that car being in the way for them. But a bad guy, they're not going to smash that car out of the way. Nobody's going to do a bank heist into this place I was at. So maybe that's an option, is just to help war game it or whatever, to deal with some of the frustration of the unknown. Some of the tips from holding watch and stuff.
Yeah. Do you have a chat for tomorrow?
No, I haven't been able to do that stuff. I'll be doing that hopefully again in the future, but
oh, okay.
Nope.
Well, if you watch this in replay, leave a comment. Anything we talked about, agree with, disagree with, think we got right, got wrong, let me know. I always read the comments. They're always appreciated. And for those that were out in the side chat,
I heard that you could join this chat by going to the Gilded and finding the link and being part of this chat.
Yes and no. The link, only some people can see the link. So maybe, but there is a link for the Gilded. It's a place to hang out. You can chit chat, share. Oh, I forgot to do the banner tonight. Oh, well. Share pictures, memes. You can always get a hold of me there. And probably most of the other people that come on the chats, you can get a hold of them too if you wanted. And yeah, no chat on Wednesday. And no overnight next Sunday. So we'll be off for a week basically. But gots to work, gots to make that monies. And any parting words, G-Webs?
Thanks again for hosting. Appreciate it. Looking forward to the next one.
Oh, thanks for jumping on. And again, thank you to everybody that was out there in the live chat and those who maybe were listening and didn't say anything. Appreciate you too. There we go. So other than that, I hope everybody has a good rest of the night.
You still here? It's over. Go home. No.